Hey everybody, this is Ruby as always, and welcome back to another RedM video. So I've got some more inspiration to make a new video. I know it's been a while, but I had some good ideas for some videos in this series that we could do for RedM, for 5M, and then maybe even Unreal Engine if you guys would be up for that. Definitely let me know. But in today's video, what I'd really like to do is work on a teleportation menu because it's something that would be super useful for us as we develop some different scripts or work on some different things just so we can kind of get around. I guess they don't like the song I'm playing. But so we're going to work on the teleportation menu today, and this is what it's going to look like. Basically, we'll be able to go through a set of locations. Like, for example, we have a bunch of locations here in Saint Denis, and you can click on any of these locations and then teleport over to them. And then there's all different kinds of ones that I've collected from different public sources and things like that. But yeah, you can pretty much just click on any of them. So let's go over, let's say to the Trapper, for example, and it will teleport you over here and close the menu and things like that. So it's pretty cool. So anyways, the code's pretty straightforward to this, but it's pretty cool to check out. So let's go ahead and jump over to Visual Studio and knock out some of this code. Alright, so I'm here in Visual Studio, and I've already done a few things to basically get a base project up and going. So I've set up a new solution that I'm going to use to house all of the code for this series, and that's just so that we don't have to keep making a bunch of different projects. We'll just use one, basically. So I've done this. I've basically set up the main.cs file. I've set up the inheritance for base script, and I've also imported the CitizenFX client library as well as menu API. Now you can get, for example, CitizenFX from your RedM application data. Menu API you can get from the GitHub releases, or something else you can do is you can come to tools and go to the package manager and then go to manage the packages for your solution. Go to browse and then just type RedM. And in here you can actually get some of the libraries too that way, if you prefer to do it that way. Anyways, so the first thing that we need to do is actually set up a new file to hold the menu to teleport us around. So let's go ahead and minimize the references. Then we'll right click on our project and we'll go to add new item. And then we'll name this teleport menu. All right. And in here, let's go ahead and import menu API like so. And because we're going to want to set up a couple of different variables to house like our menus and things like that, this one's pretty simple. There's not too much that we have to keep track of this menu, so it's pretty straightforward. So basically, we'll go ahead and set up a private static of the menu, with the type of menu and the name of menu, which is a little confusing, but it works. So we'll set that there. And then the next thing that we want to do is actually have all of the locations that we're going to want to teleport to. So like I said earlier, I've collected all of these from public sources, and I've basically formatted them into a dictionary where we can use them here in C#. So let's go ahead and add in these couple imports that we'll need. And here for the generic, there we go. Cool. So what you see here, this type is a little confusing looking, but basically you have a parent dictionary and then a child dictionary, in that basically you have your different zones. Like for example, let's come down here to Saint Denis. So Saint Denis is a dictionary, and then it has a child dictionary with all of its locations. So things like the police HQ, the paperboy, the post office, things like that. Then this child dictionary, the string is, of course, the location, but then its value is just a set of coordinates where we can teleport to. So this makes it really simple to iterate over this list and generate it dynamically, so you can add and edit as much as you want. And then as soon as the resource loads, it'll build the menu so that you then will have your updated menu. You don't have to change a bunch of code. So let's go ahead and we'll minimize this for now, just to make it a little easier on the screen. And let's bring it down here. So the first thing we'll want to do is actually create the menu. So let's set up a public static void called create menu. And in here, we'll actually set up our menu. So we'll call menu is equal to new menu. And then this string that it's asking for here is just the name of the menu, or the title, I guess you could say. So we'll put teleport menu here. Then the next thing we'll want to do is called menu controller. And then we'll want to set the menu toggle key to 0 or just some other value like that. This is so that when you open other menus in RedM, it doesn't open this menu as well. If we set this to 0 or like something else like that, whenever it will, basically the menu will only open when we want it to. So we'll then call menu controller dot add menu, and then we'll add our kind of main teleport menu to the actual menu controller. And there we go. So if we were to run this right now, we would basically just have a blank menu. We can't even really open it yet, and there's no content in it yet. So not very useful to us quite yet. But the one thing that we can do is we can then start using this dictionary that we have down there to generate all of our submenus and all of our menu items. So to do that, we can use a for each. And then since we're using a dictionary, we'll use key value pair. And we'll tell it that we're expecting a string, and then a dictionary with a string and a vector 3. And we'll name it entry, and then we'll say locations here, locations. And then here we're going to need to create a new method to basically generate our submenus for us. So we could put the code in here, but we can go ahead and separate it out. So let's go ahead and create a private static, and this could either return a void or a menu. We don't really need this to return a menu, but we'll just go ahead and do it here. So we'll call create submenu here, and in here we're going to want to take the name of the submenu that we're creating, like for example Saint Denis or Eastern Zones. So let's take a name that's a string. And then we want to pass this child dictionary here. And that will give us all of the different locations that we want to teleport to. So here we'll just say dictionary, and then string vector 3 is the type. And then let's call this locations like this. And then up here in our create menu method, we can just call create submenu. And then to basically pass the values that we want, we're going to want to pass this string here, which is going to be equal to the submenu title, like Saint Denis. So this would be entry.key. And then we want to pass this child dictionary, which are all of our sublocations and their actual coordinates. And that's going to be under entry.value there. So that's it for this method here. So the next thing we actually need to do is create this submenu method that will generate all of our different actual menu items and buttons and things like that. So in this submenu method, the first thing we'll need to do is actually create our submenu, and this is going to be a type of menu as well. And then we can just name this submenu, and this will be equal to a new menu. And in here we can pass for example, the menu name. So we'll say teleport menu here, and then you can also pass a subtitle. So I'll actually use the zone name as the subtitle, and it'll work really well here. The next thing we want to do is use the menu controller and add the submenu to our main menu. And here we can see we have to pass the parent and then the child. So we'll pass our main menu here, and then we'll pass our submenu as the second parameter. So now that we have this menu, we can't really toggle it or anything yet. So the next thing we'll want to do is create a button to actually toggle it. So we'll call menu item, and then we can call it like menu button, for example. And this will be equal to a new menu item. And then this would be the text in the button name. So in our case, we actually want to use name here. And that's so that it will actually make a menu button that says Saint Denis or Eastern Zones, for example. And then just so that people know that you can click on it and that it's a menu, we'll add a little icon off to the right. So we'll use right icon is equal to menu item.icon.arrow right. There we go. And now the next thing we need to do is actually add this button to the menu, or else it wouldn't be of much use. So let's go ahead and add menu item here, and we'll call menu button as the parameter. And there we go. Then finally, the last thing we need to do is bind this menu item to the actual submenu. So we need to again call the parent menu, which would be menu, then the child menu, which would be submenu, and then we need the menu button. There we go. So quite a few menus in there. So with this being said and done, now we have our menu all set up. We can actually open our submenu from the main menu, and it will load up, and it won't display anything yet because this is the next part that we have to add. So again, much like in the create menu method, we'll do another for each, and we'll use a key value pair again since it's a dictionary. But this time it'll be a string and a vector 3 since it's the child dictionary. Then we'll call this entry and locations again. So in here, all we really need to do is create all of the different buttons or menu items for the locations. We don't have to bind them to anything. We're going to use an on item select method later in this method to basically then teleport our player to whichever location they've chosen. So we'll create a new menu item, and we can just name it item and menu item. And then we want this to be to the entry key, since this will be the actual location name, like for example, the barber or the docks, or some specific location like that. Then we need to actually add this new item to the submenu. So we'll call add menu item and then item, just like that. You could also just do this as well if you wanted to. It's up to you. It really depends how you like to do it. So with that said and done, now we have our menu with all of our locations. However, if you were to hit enter on any of them, you're not really going to go anywhere yet because it doesn't have any of that logic to basically control that. So the next thing we need to do is actually add that. So to do that, we'll call submenu, and on here you can see the on item select method here, and then we'll use the plus equals operator. Then the 3 variables that you have available to you here are menu, item, and index, and these are going to be equal to, of course, the submenu that this item selection happened on, the item that was selected, and then the index of the item that was selected, so 0 through how many ever there are, basically. So in here, we need to pick up a few different variables from the natives, and that'll allow us to teleport our player to wherever we really want them to go to. So in here, the first thing we need to do is go ahead and grab our player's pet ID, because a few of the natives that we're going to use, we're going to have to reference that. So we might as well cache it. So let's go ahead and call int player pet ID is equal to api.player pet ID. Easy enough. And let's go ahead and add this missing dependency. There we go. And the next thing we want to do is actually figure out which target we're actually going to. So like I said earlier, this item variable is equal to the item that you've selected. So since we know which item we've selected and that our locations is a dictionary, it's actually really simple to figure out which location our player has requested. So we can set up a vector 3 with our target, and this is going to be wherever our player wants to go. Then we can just call locations. Then we can just call item, and item has an attribute called text in there, and this will actually get you the text of the button that they clicked, or the menu item, I should say, I guess. And this will then call the dictionary up by the string value and return us the vector 3 location that they want to go to. So this is just a really simple way of doing it, and there's of course many ways that you could do this, but this was the way that I decided to go about it. Alright, so the next thing we need to do is actually figure out who our target ped or target mount or target vehicle even is going to be, because if our player was on a horse or in a vehicle and you were to just change your player's coordinates, nothing would actually happen. He would stay in the same spot. So to do this, what we want to do is set up this variable here called target ped, And then we just need to do a little bit of conditional statements to figure out basically who our target's going to be. So the first thing we can do is use is ped in any vehicle. And in here, it's going to ask for the ped ID. So we'll pass player ped ID. And then it says at get in. So this means when they're getting into the vehicle, if that's counting. And I would like to count that as well. So if they are in a vehicle, then our target ped needs to actually be the last vehicle they've driven, which would just be the vehicle that they're in right now. So we'll say get last driven vehicle here, and there's no parameters for this, so it means your player here. And then we'll use an else statement, and then basically we want to know if our player is on foot, and if they are on foot, then we know we just need to target our player. And if they're not on foot, then that means they're on a mount or like a horse, so we need to target the horse instead. So here we'll use target ped, and we can use api.getIsPed on foot. And here we do need to pass our player ped ID. And this will give us a true or false on if they're on foot or not. So here we can just use a ternary instead of some actual indented conditionals or something like that. So to do a ternary, we'll do a question mark. And in a ternary, the first value after the question mark is if the statement is true. So if our ped is on foot, then we actually want to use our player ped ID here. Then the second value after the colon in the ternary is if the value is false. So if they are not on foot, we actually want to get whatever our mount is. So we can do api.get mount, and then again we'll pass our player ped ID here, and there we go. That's the targets we need. So this way all the use cases are covered. So if they're in a vehicle, if they're on foot, if they're on a horse, whichever way they're coming, we're going to teleport them, right? So api.setEntity chords here. And in here, we're then going to pass our target ped, or really target ID. We really should rename this target ID because technically the vehicle is not a ped. So we'll say target ID here. And then the next thing it wants are the position floats. So here we'll just pass target.x, target.y, and target.z, or z if you're not from the US, and then true for the x, y, and z axis parameters here, and then false for the clear area one because that doesn't really matter to us. And then finally, what we'd like to do is close the menu, because after we've selected a area, we just need to close the menu because we're pretty much done with it. So with all of this out of the way, that's basically it for this. The last thing that we'll need to do is return our submenu. And like I said earlier, we could just return a void and just not return anything because we're not technically doing anything with it up here. So either way is perfectly fine. I think even returning void is technically the correct way to do this since we're not using the return value, right? So, all right, cool. That's basically it. The only other thing that we'll probably really want here is a way to open the menu. And we could just reference the variable and make it public and allow outside classes to use it, but we can just keep it private and instead use a method in here to interact with it. So we can create a public static void called open menu. And one thing we can also do in here is we can detect if the menu has been created. I do want to add something in the main file where as soon as the resource gets started, we'll create the menu, but I just like to add this as kind of a fail-safe. So if menu is equal to the default of the type menu, then I'd like to just create the menu. And then regardless if it's true or if it's false, we still want to open the menu. There we go. So now we have our method to open it. We have our creation method. We can teleport places. So we're pretty much set. The only thing we need to do now is go over to our main file and add some of the supporting logic there as well. We're going to set up a few extra things, like, for example, we could register a command. We could do some keybind detection if we wanted to. We can also create the menu on resource start if we wanted to. So first things first, if you did want to register a command, you can do it this way. We can do API.register command, and then we can call it, for example, T menu for teleport menu, and then we'll do a new action, teleport menu, and then false. And let's add this missing import here, and this one here, and then let's add a new method for this. So this will be teleport menu, and in here you could kind of do whatever you wanted to really do. Oops, we're missing a parentheses there. You could, for example, call client.teleport menu menu or open menu. There we go, and do it this way. You could also do that check in here if it's equal to the default type, the default value of the type, then create it if you wanted to. Another thing that you could do here is actually set up a decorator for an event handler. So we can say on client resource start and a private void of resource start, and whenever the resource gets started, it will execute any of the code in here. So we could, for example, put resource was started, and you could see that in the F8 log whenever you actually got into the game. But in here, all we really need to do is we can just call teleport menu dot create menu, and we could do it. We need like this, and this is just kind of an easy way to do it. This way, as soon as the resource starts, the menu gets created, and we don't really have to worry about it. Another way that we could, for example, other than the command, like I mentioned, we could pick up on a key press. So let's set up a tick handler here, and let's say here, and in here we can pick up if a control was just released or something like that, and that's usually my preferred way of detecting it. So you could also do this in the actual teleport menu class. You would just need to register the script with CitizenFX so that it knows it's there. Otherwise, even if you do this tick decorator and you even do the inheritance from base script, it won't actually run your tick handler. But you could always do something, like client.teleportMenu.tick event or something like that. But honestly, just registering your script's a little cleaner way of doing it. But we'll just use the main class to detect this here. So since we already have this teleport menu method anyways, so we can do API.isControl just released, and then for the pad index we'll do 0 since we're detecting a keyboard event. And then for the control, we want to put in this hex value. Don't worry, I'll put it down in the description for you. And this is equal to the F6 key. So then we'll call teleport menu here, and this would then open up our menu with a key press as well. So super useful for us so that we can trigger it multiple ways, and that our menu gets created automatically for us. So it's just super useful. So with all of this out of the way, that was all that we really have to do for this script. So the next thing we can do is let's go ahead and build it. Let's make sure our code's actually valid, right? And one succeeded. So cool. Let's go ahead and jump over into the game and see how this works. All right, so that's all it for the code. And like I said, it wasn't too bad. We've kind of got a basic menu where we can teleport around, and most of the menu API things we had to do weren't too crazy advanced. So hey, we got pretty lucky. So for now, we can go ahead and click into the menu, and we can do /T menu to open up our teleport menu if we wanted to, or we can close it and actually hit F6 if we wanted to, which is a little bit more convenient. So for example, right now I'm in Saint Denis, so let's actually head over to the theater, and we can see it working. And like you see, it closes the menu automatically for us. And if we were to requisition a horse, we could also, oh, he's not very happy about that. And we could silly teleport to the post office. We're getting shot at. Gotta get away anyways, right? So yeah, as you can see, it works on foot, it works on a horse. So it's very, very useful. It doesn't really matter, like we don't have to add extra code for it really. So all really cool. So that's it for this video. Definitely leave any suggestions you have down below. Why is it so muggy? Wow. And I'd love to take care of them in this series. Or if you have any ideas for the other series for like 5M or anything like that, I'd be happy to take a look at them. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time.